Well, good morning, good afternoon, and in some cases, good evening, everyone. I'm Rosemary Ryan, Director of the Program Capacity and Learning Team. I'm here in our Google Hangout with some of our team. I have Jamie, Maria, and Amanda with me in the room, and we also have an IRC chat going on as we come together to provide another opportunity for us to talk about the Program Capacity and Learning Roadmap. And this will be recorded and posted for community not able to join us online. Relatively informal. What we'd like to do is give you just a big picture of where this journey has been to date, and then really use this time for conversation and questions. Feel free to write in the chat box, as well as note comments on the PC&L pages. There is a roadmap on Meta in which we're really having very deep conversations with community. We want to thank you with regard to both our priorities and projects as we prepare to plan for our annual plan for the coming year. Thanks to those of you who've already contributed comments. All the team has agreed that your comments are really helping us refine this work. So let's go to the first slide and talk to you a little bit about the roadmap. Back in November, community engagement integrated learning and evaluation, education, and libraries, and we also took on the leadership in supporting affiliate partnerships, and that includes support of our AFCOM Community Leadership Committee. We also tried to keep in mind what we had been hearing about underserved community needs such as GLAM. Our mandate was to look at infrastructure and learning across these programs and create a roadmap to help community with an emphasis on supporting program leaders and shared learning. Let's go to our next slide and talk a little bit about what that listening entailed. We did qualitative interviews with different groups representing program leaders, affiliates, WMF partners here, and that was particularly very important because we learned to connect some dots through those cross-team communications. And that further refinement continues through this week. At the same time, we have been watching the community consultations on WMF strategies, so looking at those comments as well. What happens then is we'll go about the tough job of even further prioritization and focus. So beginning questions, we wanted to find out, as we mapped in the room literally, what do we know about community leaders, and what do we know about the importance of programs linked to content, linked to contributors, and what will be the highest and best use of limited staffing resources? Let's take a look at just a quick glance at the data. We looked at the data, and you can see in 1 year from across 6 different programs, 733 implementations, you can see a snapshot of the content that's been created. This includes writing contests, Wiki Loves Monument, photo contests, GLAM, and you can see the contribution that our programs make to both engaging contributors as well as content. We also looked at the relatively new libraries program and the connection of that team with partners and top editors. Recently, our education team went about the work of looking back to what has been the impact of education on engagements of students in Wikipedia articles. And that data is now being synthesized, but we did a raw sample of what we will be sharing later on next quarter. And then what we're seeing is the growth of our affiliates. Jamie has taken on a lead in this work, and you can see our affiliates, including not only chapters but user groups, increasing 46% in 2015. So we began the study and the questions by asking community leaders, what are the barriers? And really, there were several themes that popped up. So let's take a quick look at those. And I'm looking forward to a conversation from those on the Hangout and IRC about any other barriers that we might be missing in this work and in these discussions. The first was getting lost in the museum. The quote from Kippleboy perhaps says it best. We needed to go from searching to finding. As a community, we're great at organizing the world's knowledge, not so much when it comes to organizing our own knowledge. The key is there's a lot of information out there, and we've made a lot of progress, but finding exactly what you need when you need it can be a little bit like being lost in a very large museum and not knowing where the right collection is. So organizing and finding our own movement knowledge became one of those obstacles. Another theme we saw was, and I love this picture from Commons, it's hard to get there and know when you have arrived. And what we mean by that is we've heard about antiquated GLAM tools and the fact that you as leaders want to do this work, and we need to make it easier for you to do what you love by giving you the technology that makes running programs and collecting data effortless. You're going to be hearing soon, if you have not already, about Amanda Bittaker's work in the Global Metrics API, in which we went and made it much easier to collect global metrics with the API magic button. But there's lots more that needs to be done in that area. Essentially, making it easy for you to run your programs and collect the data without that heavy, hard collection data effort. Also, knowing when we've arrived, being able to tell the story. So knowledge voids. In any nonprofit organization, we've certainly seen it here at the Foundation, when you have a volunteer community and you have volunteer leaders, you risk the loss of information, institutional knowledge that really enables you to go forward. We found fragmented learnings, loss of findable knowledge, the staff and volunteer turnover, both at the Foundation as well in community. We really need to make sure that we're capturing that information, but also we go from searching to finding. There's lots of information, but how do you get the information that will inform knowledge and decision making? And then there's not being lost at sea, although that ship might look a little bit like that. But while community is not lost at sea, nor are programs lost at sea, helping affiliates and program leaders connect with each other, connect people to people and people to the resources they need. For example, if you're getting started with a GLAM program. And as well, we here at the Foundation get approached by global partners, and being able to identify are those partners that are the right connection for our community, and how do we connect those partners with the communities on the ground doing the work. So this is something we really like your criteria. I have to say that my just incredible appreciation for these three teams that came together. They looked at all of their existing workflows as well as potential new projects. And we held some conversations with community. This is one of the areas we'd like your feedback on. And we had to identify what is going to be the criteria to assess both existing work of individual teams as well as looking at high leverage opportunities as we integrated these three teams. The first was with regard to impact. Did we see an impact on content and contributors? Did we also have documented community need, i.e. there were several points of data, particularly the pain expressed by community, that indeed this is a problem that they needed our help with. A scalability, it supported multiple communities, partnerships, and replication of best practices, as well as sustainability. We don't want to be a single point of failure here at the Foundation, and we need to be able to support you in doing that work. So we came to two main highways in the roadmap. The first being program and learning infrastructure, and the second highway being community leadership development. Let's take a look at each of those, and we'd really like to get your comments with regard to not only the criteria, but also these key areas. So program and learning infrastructure. As we know with roads, if the foundation isn't there, you really can't get where you need to be. I want to thank community members who have given us very specific guidance on the tools and infrastructure that has been needed, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those project prototypes underway. Under the program and learning infrastructure, we essentially have on our meta pages links to a program and events dashboard. For example, this will make it easier across programs. Some of you may be familiar with the WikiEd dashboard. We found that WikiEd had already invested in this major dashboard to make it easy to run programs, collect data. And so we have gone about, particularly with the failure of the Colab software that was being used, that just wasn't working anymore, that had security issues, the customization of the program and events dashboard, we could get that to work across languages, and we could get that to work across programs. So that is a prototype. The Wikimedia Resource Center, not the first time you've heard about this. I will say that our team over the holidays found that not only did we want to create this tea house forum, this single point of entry where you could find information easier, but we found out in the course of discussions that several other teams here at WMF were planning similar portals. And so what we were able to do was connect the dots, and we have a cross-functional team working on the Wikimedia Resource Center, a plan to make information more findable, which would also have a contact ask bot with regard to contacting individual teams here at WMF. Community tools, a variety of tools that need attention, including the GlamWiki tool set, and we've been working with our partners in Community Tech to make sure we're aligned and our annual plan will be connected, as well as having some common tools that can be used by community, such as Edward's community survey support desk and community listening, making sure that we're getting information that advises the annual plan, and we're avoiding survey fatigue of our community as well. So our team is, if you can kind of think of it as a little bit of silo busting, in that we're trying to really take a look at the variety of tools that are needed across teams and try to make them more findable for community members and affiliates. The second area, we talked about infrastructure, the second highway being community leadership development, engaging and supporting community leaders to transform their knowledge so that knowledge flows. What does that entail? A variety of items, but let's take a look at two that are listed on our meta page. Actually, three. Peer mentoring. We already have experimented somewhat with this. This past year, we're really excited to recruit what we call peer faculty leaders. In my opinion, I think I've said this to some of you, the longer you're at the foundation, the dumber you get. And I say that because our community leaders need to be teaching other community leaders. And so my hope would be at conferences, we're always team teaching, and we're positioning peer leaders to serve as those go-to resources in their local community. So the Education Collab was the 1.0 version of that. We're looking at making that more robust with more support, and also leveraging our AFCOM group, which had been doing a lot of the technical review. We freed them up from doing that type of support. So, and I have to say that I want to thank those of you that are weighing in on the conversation. Really connecting peer mentoring at AFCOM together really seems to make sense, as well as continuation of the work with our learning patterns and learning and knowledge sharing. I mentioned that we're connecting the work of PCNL, and we're keeping an eye on what's coming out of the emerging WMF strategy. So I just did want to share with you that with regard to comments coming in with regard to the top approaches, you can see a little bit about how this team's work connects with the approach with regard to communities, creating and supporting programs to increase volunteer participation, such as recognition, mentorship, and personalized re-engagement. Approach 5, with regard to reducing that manual work, this is what gets to the dashboard, this is what gets to the program and events dashboard, as well as the GLAM tools that we're working in conjunction with Community Tech on the community wish list. Knowledge, really supporting those underserved groups such as the GLAM programs, and potentially new partnerships like STEM. And approach 3, increasing communication and transparency with and between our communities and across Wikimedia affiliates. I will say that I have strongly been encouraging And I think all of us here on the team have been encouraging that this process we've gone through with engaging you early and creating our annual plan is one that I think could have replication in other parts of the organization, that we begin with community voice. And then finally, with regard to reach, getting better at understanding how and why our users come and stay on our projects so we can better serve their needs. I think that about wraps up the high-level review of what we're looking at. We do have some questions to get the conversation started, and I'll be curious. I'll see what questions we may have gotten already, but if we go to that next slide.
We do have one question at this point. They're wanting clarification on what was meant by global partners. So I believe it's been answered partly on IRC that we mean more generally our affiliates as well as those institutional program partners that we're working with through GLAM and education programs, as well as the partners that we're working with for the Wikipedia library to share their licenses. I'm sure the leaders of those programs can tell a little more about those partners, but in general, I believe that's what was meant.
Yes, it was. Thanks, Jamie, for that clarification. Yeah, I have found also working in other organizations that oftentimes a global partner, a knowledge partner, will want to connect with the global organization versus reaching out to 50 or 60 different communities. Our job is not to get in the business of doing that work, but hopefully giving that connection point to communities.
All right, thank you.
So other questions?
Yeah, there's a question from Ivan. You mentioned some examples the last year about mentoring to GLAM leaders. Do you have some examples?
Mentoring to GLAM leaders.
I don't know if Jake is on the conversation.
We have Alex. He's on IRC.
I can try. I know that. So
there's been a lot of encouragement from a couple of GLAM boot camps that Wikimedia DC has been involved in. There's generally been good efforts made with the coaching and learning days in many cases, so we're working to sort of synthesize those models into something that we can replicate for core programs and activities.
Well, I think you worked on the Learning Circle as well, right? And there was a lot of information that bubbled up from that. One thing I was looking at on the chat on Meta was that I think the one connection is helping, and I've heard this across programs. I'd be really curious what your thoughts are. Helping new folks getting involved in GLAM get started seems to be one of the questions that comes up as well. I did see that above and beyond that mentorship and support is that the tools are the one thing that is really a huge pain point for our GLAM communities. If we can make it easier for them to do that job, and we're making that a priority.
Yeah, and the other big thing that keeps coming up is the curation of information. There's tons and tons of knowledge out there, but it's in so many different places, and it can also be unique in each case. So that we need to be able to better be able to go through that information that we share to find the most relevant advice for each situation.
Other questions?
No new questions here.
No new questions.
No.
On IRC? Well, my notation is we would really like to hear from you what most excites you about the roadmap, and look forward to your comments. What can be strengthened or improved? And I will note what are cautions and concerns. I know our concern as a team is we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. That's an expression I don't think it translates across communities. But we want to make sure that at the end of this year that we can deliver on what we say we're going to do. If we want to get better at transparency, if we want to get better at saying this is the plan and then being able to report out on how that plan went, we will probably need some deeper prioritization. And we really encourage your comments so that this team can do the very best. And we view our role as supporting all of you.
Stuart has a comment. Stuart, do you want to unmute and maybe talk about it?
Oh, and I see Andrew on the phone. Nice to meet you. Andrew.
Hello, yeah, I've unmuted. So, yeah, I mean, I just caught the part about personalized re-engagement of volunteers. And it's something we're trying to do at Wikimedia UK because, you know, we've got a large community, but some of them, you know, are relatively dormant or, you know, not involved with the chapter. And I was wondering whether anyone had any examples of, methods or successes in this area. Anyone?
Can you repeat the question? Examples of what exactly?
Okay, well, successes basically, where people they've got a lot of potential community, or people that are perhaps not that active, and they've successfully re-engaged people who perhaps haven't been doing things for a couple of years, and they've found a kind of, I don't know, methodology of re-engaging these people. It's a big question really, but like I was just wondering if anyone has any specific.
Yeah, so this is Jamie here. I haven't seen anything where people have found that explicitly. I know that I think the closest tracking to re-engagement or engagement over time has been through also James Hare at Wikimedia DC, who's been tracking repeat participants. But in terms of re-engaging, we don't have a lot of people actually reporting on reactivation or retention. When we did the programs reports this last year, following the pilot of the year before, we did look at retention from programs. And for WikiLives Monuments, we do find some interesting data when we look at the 12-month, like, sort of retention, and that the trend sort of has a little bump up. So we see signs through programs that people will come back for a specific program or event, but the data are not so strong that we have any particular models that anyone has shared yet.
And I think anecdotally we have heard that having just regular meetups where people know they can come and be with other Wikimedians is successful, but we don't have any hard data on that yet.
Correct.
Yeah, and I thank Flor for adding in on the conversation here. This team really views ourselves as providing the space and place for us to curate more of that information that's happening. I know even in the course of the qualitative interviews we've been doing, we've been learning several things about, and this is also what are potential links with technology. We've been asking long-term editors, like, what really got you to make 100,000 edits? And we've heard some great ideas with regard to, and this is coming across, I think, in the WNF strategy, with regard to, well, getting a featured article would do it, but just imagine if in some way we received a notice that the knowledge we've contributed across projects has reached, millions of community members. And so being able to potentially tie in technology and recognition and appreciation with volunteers is, I know, also coming up in the strategy conversation. I see some other comments on here that we probably want to dig into.
Yeah, we also have another question come up on what is meant by roadmap, and just to confirm, at this time the roadmap is under construction, and that page, program capacity and learning, is what we're referring to at this time.
Yeah.
The other question is, what is your view on community management? So I'm not sure who that comes from, or if we could get clarification on what you mean by community management, because one of the things we hear often is just being able to organize and communicate with communities, or keep track of who your members are, or be able to help them to project manage programs. There's many different things that fall under community management. Is someone available to clarify that question? Okay, well, if someone on IRC or the Hangout could further clarify that, that would be super. I'm moving on to the next question, and we'll hopefully come back to that. What is the current status of the WikiEd dashboard for use outside of education programs or for more general events? So I believe Flor is on the live Hangout and can answer that.
Yes, I can answer that.
Good morning.
Morning. So or afternoon or evening, wherever everybody else is. So yes, this month of February we are working here at WMF with 2 engineers on getting the programs and events dashboard into a shape that is good for international programs, so that hopefully it can be used on different languages wikis, so different languages from English, and used on different wikis as well. we're hoping to come up with a minimum viable product by the end of this month. And of course, we'll need some further developments after that, but hopefully it'll be in good enough shape that we'll get it to be ready to be deployed outside of English Wikipedia. That's basically what the minimum viable product looks like. I can also paste somewhere else. I pasted it here in the chat, and I just realized that that cannot be seen on the Hangout on Air. A link to the Fabricator board. If people want to know more about what exactly we're working on, they can take a look and comment there. I can leave all the notes and the links to that if that's helpful.
Yeah, and there's also use cases that are being developed that are online that we really encourage comment on. And Amanda's also here in the room.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in there, and we'll need testers. If anybody wants to jump in there early and see what the dashboard's like and maybe work out a few bugs with us, hit me up or contact me, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda.
Next question. I'm not sure if this is coming from Odd directly, but the question is, your teams have previously been involved with evaluation in the past, specifically of programs by chapters. Am I correct you're shifting your focus from evaluation to other activities?
Oh, that is a good question. Jamie, I think I'm going to let you take that one.
Yes. So as we delved into the evaluation initiative, the primary focus has been not just on chapters programs, but programs in general, and the efforts of volunteers to do programmatic activities throughout the movement. We have initially focused mostly on the evaluation side, but we've always been also referring to program design as the ultimate outcome of the evaluation. So as we have sort of worked together, there have been immediate needs as certain programs like education have been growing rapidly, GLAM, which has been growing organically and impactfully and needs better support. These programs we have identified as having good impact as well, and we would like to better support them and looking at the design so that we can help people not to have to reinvent the wheel every time, so that they can do those things that are best practice based on what we know from the evaluations, knowing which leaders we can reach out to and find out what their models of work are and share those learnings around the movement. So we don't see it as a shift away from evaluation. We very much see it as a natural flow of evaluation in learning to design effective programs.
And I think I'd like to add to that, this team will still be doing technical consultation to grantees. And what our hope is that we will be able to provide more of those self-service tools. We've already made some progress, which will make the quantitative measurements easier. But I will say that on the project page where we're asking for comments, there is a concept described as outcome mapping, which to give you the non-technical approach to this, it's really working together so that we can work with our affiliates to really look at how to tell the diary of what are the qualitative stories behind the data as well. We've seen improvements with regard to our grantees being able to tell those stories. Jamie, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about the outcome mapping prototype that's on there, but it's really the next stage of journaling for quality. Right?
Yeah, well, really where we keep running into is we've got these quantitative metrics that work for a number of programs, but that's exactly right. We have not yet set on the path of having standardized metrics or shared measurements, whether they be completely standardized metrics or not, that we're all reporting on consistently. So working to define what those qualitative outcomes are that we're driving at would be, of course, that outcome mapping plan and the next piece of work we see as being important to understanding our more broad impact other than what we see in terms of ticks on the wiki.
And I will also say that the upcoming in Berlin, I see Cornelius is on the phone, our pre-conference learning day is focused on what we're calling peer leadership mentoring academy, which is you're still going to see content that really provides some of that basic how-to information if you're new to the movement, as well as hopefully we're going to have a different room that's focused on more how do you teach these principles. So we move from actually doing to helping you really be on the ground to do that work. Next question?
I actually just lost the page.
Can I take a question that was posted in the chat here from Leon?
Go ahead, Flor.
Okay. So the question is from Liang. He says, Anna was doing a historic data collection of education programs in a lot of countries. Will you design the dashboard according with the results of those data? So for me, Liang, there are two different projects, basically. One is the historic data collection campaign. That is something that Anna started, and that those of us who are left on the education team will follow up on. We've just done, as Rosemary pointed out earlier, we've done a first really rough synthesis of what we found, and now we're going to delve a little deeper and see what other data we have and what we can uncover and how we can then present that data. Note that this is historical data that we're asking about, so we're basically asking everything that happened up until now, so we can see the cumulative impact of what has happened with education programs all over the world to date. The dashboard has a functionality which is really pretty cool, that really easily tells you basically the data that you want to know about your education program as you're running it. So it will tell you how many articles have been created or edited, how many bytes have been added or deleted, how many files have been uploaded, but it will tell you that live. So it's not right now the best tool, sorry, I got pinged here. It's not the best tool to look at the historical data, but it is the right tool to look at the current data. So hopefully these two go in tandem, and with the dashboard you will be able to get your current data, and with the historical data collection campaign, we will see what's happened up until now when we didn't have most of those tech tools. I hope that answers your question. Feel free to ping me more if you want more explanation.
Being pinged is painful. Let's go on to we see a lot of conversations, which are great. I want to thank all of you.
Yeah, so we have some clarification on the question regarding what is your view on community management, and a link that was to an article of the community manager. Mostly this seems to be a question about the how do we define community management, perhaps? If I'm still missing this, please do continue to clarify. In the ping, it's talking about community management, and the sort of approach and the definition in this blog is to build relationships with the community, create value for members who participate in the community, and to be a liaison between the community and the company behind it all. And I think that's pretty close to what we're talking about here. We're talking about really stepping back as the experts and really stepping forward as capacity builders to enable community leaders to do more of the leading. We will continue in our expertise sharing and such, but really wanting to ramp up and leverage the expertise of community members in these new ways. So as you're looking at our proposals, please consider that this is sort of paradigm shift that we're really trying to encourage with our next steps.
Yeah, and we're advocating that across community engagement. One of the things is you have the community resources teams, which is about grants. It's about our funding for our affiliates, our new ideas. If you consider this team is about capacity and learning first. We've also been asked to step into the role of really trying to be a connector as well because of our work with AFCOM. Right now we're also supporting the work that's happening with the planning. I was really happy to see that we have a focused conversation around impact where all of you are going to have that discussion. It's less about us being the experts. I come from an environment where the community co-creates those best practices and thoughts and ideas. So again, we view our role as facilitators. We have also put forth, I don't know if any of you attended the office hour call on community engagement. As part of our work with affiliates, Jamie and I had a call on Saturday. We are really encouraging that the search for the Chief Community Officer include input with regard to the finalists by potentially our AFCOM group or our community members, because we really believe that the power of this work and this movement is with all of you, and I can't say that strongly enough. And we hope to be an advocate and a connector, whether or not you're a grantee or an affiliate or user group. And we're hoping the hub will be one way for us to be able to help connect the dots and provide that support. The roadmap. I did want to. We got a question about the roadmap. Some of you know, because I've talked with you, I've been trained by the Disney Imagineers about when they make a movie. Every movie begins as an ugly baby, and every Friday they invite different people in to say, we want you to pick apart this proposal because we begin with an ugly baby, but with your input it will get better and better. We really have viewed this conversation and this co-creation of this roadmap as feeling much more confident when we submit our annual plan that you've identified the risks. So we really encourage you to continue identifying, if you were to pick priorities as you look at these various concepts, what are the priorities for you and what are some of the concerns? And I have to say that each of our staff members on this team have said it's really helping clarify our thinking. Next question.
Next is Cornelius has this question. Actually, if you could scroll the chat down a little bit. Looking at our reorganization and all the teams and our alignment to the new strategy process, what is meant by align efforts between our affiliate organizations and the Wikimedia Foundation to increase local language and community coverage on key initiatives? So I believe this is from the general strategic work, and he's wondering how it applies, at least what's covered from our CE team and our PCNL team we could probably speak to. But as far as the main question here, how do you want to align and what are the key initiatives? I believe that is yet to be defined. That is exactly what the larger strategy dialogue is about. And I believe that's still open.
Yeah, and I think, our team's strong recommendation is that whatever the final strategy that's proposed, there be a very deep conversation in Berlin about when that is put forth. What does that mean? So it's not us and them. It is really how do we all work together around these goals. And I think I'm really looking forward to the Berlin conference and then going forth at Wikimania, this being more of an ongoing conversation about. It's like the power of one and power of many. How do we work at the global level to provide that infrastructure and support, and then how can we best support you to do that job? I know that we have been encouraged strongly to be less of the doers and more of the supporters of your work. I'm not sure that answers all of your questions, only to say that your comments both on the community consultation as well as to our team's work is really informing what you're going to be seeing under FDC review.
There was also a comment from Stuart earlier about GLAM and how it's not even just the GLAM partnerships and what happens, but bringing them and moving them forward through Wikimedia in Residence. Could you scroll up?
Yeah. Here, is it this one? Yeah. So they're actually training their residents together to work on using Wikidata. So this is feeding back into the Wikidata partnerships. So looking at how programs can seed and feed one another in our projects. And I just wanted to make sure that that was addressed. Thank you for showing that, Stuart. There's another question using the question app by Sydney. Is the plan to have a dashboard maintained and enhanced under PCNL?
I will take that question if I may. All right, so Sydney, thanks for that question. So what we're looking at right now is get a minimum viable product for the international community ready to go. What you should know about the dashboard is that there will just be one instance of the dashboard. So the WikiEd dashboard will look differently, but it will be basically the same software as the International Programs and Events dashboard. So part of the maintenance will be covered by the WikiEd Foundation because they will, of course, make sure that their tool works for them. And then, of course, we also have to make sure that we take part in the maintenance. That is a question that we are addressing right now. We are in the middle of our annual planning cycle, and that's what we're addressing there to make sure that we do get the maintenance that is. Well, we need it. It's very simple. In the meantime, between now and when the next annual plan kicks in, most of the work that we'll need to be doing will be on developing it and getting it ready for rollout on different wikis. So I think maintenance will be not too much up until the point where the new annual plan hits us. And I hope that answers your question, and feel free to follow up if you want more details.
And thanks, Flora. And last Friday, I think we met with Community Tech, and what was exciting to see is a lot of what we're talking about is showing up on the community wish list. And so we're having those conversations to look at how the tools we're recommending align with that, so that in their annual plan, they're not coming up with something that's completely different from what we're recommending. And it's really nice to see that alignment happening here. Let's see where we are in the morning questions. What haven't we answered?
Well, what's most exciting could be strengthened, or what cautions and concerns.
Yeah, and so let me give you, please feel free, if you would chat in the chat box, what's most exciting about the roadmap. It would be great to capture some of your comments in addition to what you're writing online.
Or if it's easier for you to just
or just say
unmute and speak.
What could be strengthened or improved, or what are any flags that you have about, because again, I want to emphasize that we and this team really view this as representing solutions to your biggest pain points and how we can best help you. Hearing none, we'll give it a couple of minutes and we'll do a wrap on this and let you know our next steps. We will, when this closes out, Maria, on February
19th.
February 19th. This team will be taking all of the comments and feedback. We'll be mapping that with our annual plan, and that is what you will see when our plan is submitted for FDC review. And I think we have another question.
Yeah, Sydney is asking, as I understand it, in the past your team helped provide support for FDC and maybe other community grant committees. Will you continue to do this work, or has this been moved to community resources?
Well, obviously, much of that work is already held by community resources, but in terms of coaching on the evaluation, that will absolutely continue as has in the past.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I want to thank all of you for joining the conversation, being our partners, and again, please do note any questions, comments, concerns, so that when we represent our plan, we know that we have our combined best thinking, and we wish you a great week. Thanks, everyone.